6th, coming to you live from Seoul, I'm Kim Mo-gyan. Before we get started, these are the stories we're following at the top of the hour. North Korea says its missiles launched on Thursday were the regime's new tactically guided missiles and reached their target 600 kilometers off the East Sea. The North explained that the launch was not overseen by leader Kim Jong-un. South Korea's prime minister announced the government's decision to extend the current distancing measures for 2 more weeks, meaning gatherings with 5 or more people will continue to be banned. And the IMF upgraded South Korea's growth outlook for this year, taking into account resilient exports and the latest supplementary budget. Our top story today, a day after firing 2 short-range missiles into the East Sea, North Korea earlier this morning confirmed that it had carried out the illicit activity. However, its leader Kim Jong-un didn't supervise at the testing site. Now, for more, we have our North Korean affairs correspondent Kim Dami on the line for us. Dami, tell us more.
Hi, Mo-gyan. Confirming the launch of ballistic missiles for the first time in about a year, North Korea said Friday it had test-fired new tactical guided missiles. Its Syrian news agency reported that the Academy of Defense Science conducted the launch of the 2 missiles that accurately hit the target set in the water 600 kilometers off the east coast. Without specifying the projectile type, the North called it a weapon system whose warhead weight had been upgraded to 2.5 tons. But watchers know that it could have been an upgraded version of its KN-23 missile, which was showcased during a military parade back in January. Similar to Russian Iskander-type missiles, the advanced KN-23 missiles seem to have a sharper warhead and required a larger transporter erector launcher. The North's leader Kim Jong-un did not oversee the missile testing. Instead, the vice chairman of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party, Lee Byung-chul, guided the Thursday's launch.
Now, Tommy, following the news, I'm hearing the U.S. Defense Ministry also strongly denounced the North's activity. Give us more details.
Right. Washington was also quick to recognize that the recent launch violates the UN Security Council resolutions. According to Reuters, the Pentagon spokesperson said that the North's weapons activity is a threat to the region as well as the international community. Also on Wednesday, the U.S. military's Indo-Pacific Command said that America's commitment to the defense of South Korea and Japan remains ironclad. With the Biden administration due to unveil new North Korea policy in the coming weeks, Thursday's launches also came just 4 days after the regime fired 2 cruise missiles into the Yellow Sea over the weekend. This also marks the North's first launch of ballistic missiles since Biden took office. That's all I have. Back to you, Mo-gyan.
Thank you for the report, Dami. Now, the United Nations Security Council Sanctions Committee on North Korea is set to hold a meeting over Pyongyang's missile launches into the East Sea. A spokesman for the U.S. mission to the UN said the meeting will take place on Friday at the request of the United States. A year ago, countries addressed a similar issue at the UN Security Council at ambassador level. But this time, the U.S. has requested that lower-level diplomats from the Sanctions Committee take part, possibly to leave room for potential diplomatic dialogue with North Korea.
Thank you, Mr.
And responding to North Korea's latest missile launches, U.S. President Joe Biden has warned that Washington will respond accordingly should the regime overstep the line. Now, speaking at his first press conference since taking office, Biden also addressed China, saying Beijing will not replace the U.S. as the world's economic superpower. Our Kim Hyo-san reports.
President Biden has addressed North Korea's latest missile launches, explaining that Washington will respond appropriately if the regime continues to escalate tensions.
Let me say that, number one, UN Resolution 1718 was violated by those particular missiles that were tested, number one. We're consulting with our allies and partners, and there will be responses if they choose to escalate. We will respond accordingly.
Speaking Thursday at his first formal press conference since taking office, Biden also stressed that his administration is preparing to engage in diplomacy with the regime.
But I'm also prepared for some form of diplomacy, but it has to be conditioned upon the end result of denuclearization. So that's what we're doing right now, consulting with our allies.
His remarks come as the North fired 2 short-range missiles into the East Sea on Thursday, which many pundits see as a move that was long planned. President Biden also addressed China. Noting the intense competition between Washington and Beijing, he reaffirmed that the U.S. will remain the world's economic leader, regardless of China's intentions to replace it. He also stressed that the U.S. will continue to grow and expand. Biden also said Washington will work closely with its allies to hold China accountable for its actions on Taiwan, Hong Kong, the South China Sea, as well as its treatment of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang province. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
South Korea on Friday saw an uptick in daily COVID-19 cases, reporting 494 cases nationwide. 471 of those were local transmissions. Now, with the number of daily cases staying around the 300s and 400s for 10 weeks straight, health officials worry that fatigue with social distancing might be increasing. But even so, the Prime Minister on Friday announced the government's decision to extend the current distancing measures for 2 more weeks. Under the measures, gatherings with 5 or more people will remain banned, and the capital region will maintain its level 2 distancing, while the rest of the country will be under level 1.5 measures. The IMF upgraded South Korea's growth outlook for this year, taking into account resilient exports and the latest supplementary budget. In its report, the agency commended the country's effective COVID-19 containment measures and comprehensive economic policy response. Our Ji-young has more.
The IMF has raised its 2021 growth forecast for South Korea, citing stimulus programs and strong exports. In a report Friday, the agency said they expect the South Korean economy to expand 3.6% this year. This is an upgrade of 0.5 percentage points from its previous forecast in January. The IMF said growth is being supported by solid exports due to stronger external demand and the gradual normalization of COVID-19 related factors. The agency's upward revision also incorporated the impact of the latest supplementary budget, which was passed by the National Assembly on Thursday. They explained that it would allow a positive fiscal drive for this year, helping pandemic-hit workers and businesses and providing resources for the COVID-19 inoculation drive. The IMF also welcomed the country's credit support programs, especially for small businesses, and said they should remain in place until there is broader economic recovery. They also commended South Korea's capability to contain the virus effectively based on sound macroeconomic fundamentals, enabling the economy to weather the shock relatively well despite the pandemic. However, the IMF said several factors pose as downside risks to the economy, including renewed surges in infections and slower vaccinations either at home or abroad. It also said consumption and services activities have been sluggish, with employment still lagging behind the pre-COVID-19 level. Going forward, in order for a faster recovery, the agency stressed that expansionary fiscal policy and supportive macroeconomic policies should be maintained over the near term. Also, the IMF said the country should closely monitor and be prepared in the event of rapid household credit increases and the pressure in the real estate market. Ji-young, Arirang News.
South Korea's consumer sentiment rose above 100 this month, the highest reading since January 2020. According to the Bank of Korea on Friday, the consumer sentiment index surged to 100.5 in March, up 3.1 points from the previous month. The BOK attributed the rise to COVID-19 vaccine rollouts and stronger exports. It also explained that the assessment shows people believe the economy is likely to recover post-pandemic. A reading above 100 indicates improving economic prospects. South Korea marks its West Sea Defense Day today to remember those who died defending the country against North Korea's military provocations. An event will be held this afternoon at the Pyeongtaek Navy 2nd Fleet Command. Some 200 people are expected to attend, including relatives of the deceased, lawmakers, and top government officials. The day, which falls on the 4th Friday of March every year, remembers the troops killed in the Second Battle of Yeonpyeong in 1922, the sinking of the Cheonan warship, and the shelling of Yeonpyeong Island in 2010. Arirang TV will be broadcasting the event live at 2 p.m. Korea time. EU leaders held a virtual summit on Thursday to discuss a number of pending issues, such as the need for a fair vaccine distribution, as well as the resurgence of COVID-19 in the region. Our Lee Seung-jae tells us more.
A shortage of COVID-19 vaccines, spikes in new cases, the feud with the UK, and a number of other internal quarrels. These were some of the issues discussed Thursday during a virtual summit among EU leaders. Among the hottest issues was the lack of vaccines available in the bloc. 3 months after vaccination campaigns started, under 5% of the bloc's 450 million people have been fully vaccinated. According to German Chancellor Angela Merkel, the problem lies with production rather than the orders that they have been made.
The problem with the vaccination distribution at the moment has less to do with how much was ordered and is more about how much can be produced on European soil. We have seen now that British production sites are manufacturing for Britain and the United States is not exporting, so we are reliant on what can be produced within the EU.
In order to ensure a steadier supply, the EU's executive arm has proposed strengthening export controls on vaccines. The European Commission aims to force vaccine manufacturers, especially AstraZeneca, to deliver the doses agreed to in their contracts, even if the move is detrimental to non-EU nations. However, the conflict over fair distribution within the EU was raised. Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz accused some countries of receiving more than their fair share, as Austria led a coalition of 6 countries asking for the distribution process to be changed. However, the majority of EU members believe the current system is working well, and instead said Austria is making a mistake focusing on AstraZeneca instead of diversifying its vaccine portfolio. To help countries struggling with vaccine procurement, the EU is examining ways to fairly distribute the 10 million additional Pfizer-BioNTech vaccines made available to the bloc in the second quarter. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The U.S. and the UK have decided to impose fresh sanctions on Myanmar's military-controlled companies in a bid to cut off its economic resources. Soon after the decision, the U.S. State Department strongly condemned the junta's use of violence against young children. Our Choi Min-jung has more.
The United States and Britain imposed new sanctions on Myanmar, targeting the military's economic interests and resources. The U.S. Treasury Department on Thursday blacklisted Myanmar Economic Holdings Public Company and Myanmar Economic Corporation, 2 conglomerates that contribute significantly to the military's economic resources. This means that any assets the companies control in the U.S. will be frozen, and American companies and citizens will be prohibited from trading or making transactions with the entities as well. In a coordinated move with the U.S., the British Foreign Ministry announced on Thursday that it would also impose sanctions on Myanmar Economic Holdings Public Company. Citing serious human rights violations, the British Foreign Secretary said that the sanctions will help drain the sources of finance used to suppress civilians. Watchers say these sanctions are by far the most significant actions against the junta since the February 1st military coup, but some are calling for more sanctions with a faster diplomatic response. After the announcement, the U.S. State Department strongly condemned the authorities' continued use of violence against its own people, including young children. Making reference to the 7-year-old who was killed by the military, the department criticized that its abhorrent and brutal acts against children reflects the horrific nature of the military regime. According to the latest figures compiled by the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners, at least 320 people have been killed. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Experts say the massive container ship Evergreen, which ran aground the Suez Canal this week, may be stuck for weeks. According to the AP, each day the canal is blocked and shipments worth more than $9 billion are unable to move. Now, stranded ships are deciding whether to make a U-turn and head for the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa or wait it out. The former, however, would significantly increase a trip's length. Now, sailing around the Cape of Good Hope to Amsterdam takes 41 days compared to less than 2 weeks via the Suez Canal.
Good morning. Today is forecast to be the warmest day of the season so far, with highs rising into 20s across much of the country. Meanwhile, Seoul saw cherry blossoms blooming on the earliest date on record on Wednesday. But those of us in the capital region will not be able to enjoy fine spring weather today because it's dusty outside. An ultra-fine dust advisory was issued in the capital as of 7 a.m. this morning, and dust levels will remain high in many western parts of the country, but thankfully, relief is on the way. Nationwide rain is in store this weekend, and the further south you are, the heavier rainfall you're going to receive. The shower should help to ease the dryness and dust in the air. Central regions could see rain into early Monday, but sunny skies and warmer temperatures should return by next week. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that will do it for us at this hour on Arirang News. We'll be back with more of the day's headlines at noon Korea time, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
COVID-19 vaccination is the first step to resuming a normal life. Vaccination of senior citizens who are at high risk from COVID-19 is to begin in Korea. Some 380,000 residents and workers of nursing facilities aged 65 and above will be inoculated. Regular citizens aged 65 and above will be vaccinated in 2 phases. Some 3.6